Okay.
So, Victor, we were talking about the practice, and the Western mentality is that things take a long time. All right. And the analogy that I had is imagine that a whole long line of people are has got a big lock on a door, and everyone that puts in a key, it doesn't work. They've got the wrong key. And then somebody comes along and puts the key in the door, and the door opens immediately. All right. And this is the quality of the difference between being here now oriented or being time oriented, or what I refer to as clock or maybe calendar. That clocks and calendars are not the friend of humans.
Yeah.
Okay. Because we get the idea that it takes a long time. That in fact, this is the whole point about religion. People come to religion because they hurt. That's the whole point of the religion, is because people are suffering, they hurt. But the way that the religions are built is that the people who run the religion or in charge of the religion would rather make a profit off of the sorrows of others rather than actually give them a.
Yeah.
Right. And so what we do is there's a bait and switch. Oh, take Jesus as your savior and thou shalt be saved. And then next week we're back into hurting again, hurting for certain. And Jesus didn't do his job. And so you go back to the priest, and the priest says, oh, well, you got to wait until you're dead, and then he'll help you.
Yeah. It's actually funny because I went to a church this weekend, like just because people were visiting, and I remembered about like what you're saying about guilt and just suffering because I saw Jesus. He was just, it was a Catholic church. He was just lying down, just all just bleeding and just suffering. And I'm like, what really example does that set, right? People would just go for it. Was just a very oppressive. It's just ingrained in society, isn't it?
Right. That you could go so far as to say that Christianity actually nobilizes suffering, that all the saints have to suffer. Jesus, you know, is up there on that cross. Now, the Protestants, at least, they wanted him to go float up in the air. They unnailed him, and he starts. But just as he gets almost out of reach, the Catholics grab him by one foot, drag him back down, and nail him back up to that cross. You got to suffer, dude. You got to suffer.
That's exactly it. Uh, that's awesome.
So, this whole thing about the one, there's two issues about it. One is that we've got old, deep, ingrained habits, that the ability to suffer is instinctual. But what we suffer over is learned behavior. What we suffer about is learned behavior. An example of that is that when a Republican hears the word Democratic, he suffers. All right. But he was trained to suffer that way. And that in fact we're trained to suffer because it's hard to control people unless they want something from you, and getting them into a state of suffering so that they want out of their suffering, that's a good way to control people. That's how votes are cast. I mean, if you're feeling good and happy and wonderful, you don't care a flying rip about voting. The only reason you'd go vote is because you're suffering.
Yeah.
And so each of the parties, you see, the Democrats are going to promise, oh, we're going to give you all of this, that, and the other thing. We're going to take it from the wealthy people and give it to you. And so that greed causes us to suffer. And so we'll go vote for the Democrats because they promised us something. And the Republicans are on the other side, in the sense that they're into ill will and fear. And so they get their voters to vote because they're afraid of the Democrats. They're afraid of men walking into a bathroom. They're afraid of women having power. They're afraid of immigrants. They're afraid of blacks. I mean, look how many things that you Republicans can be afraid of. And the thing about it is now is I think they're getting kind of tired of being so afraid, freaked out all the time. I mean, each one of them have already bought a dozen guns and they still don't feel safe.
Yeah. uh, it, it's we have this voice that kind of knows intuitively that, for instance, anxiety is counterproductive, that like it does not really help, that just having like a panic attack, it's not really just gonna make anything better. But
Mm,
yet it's just something that is familiar, and it's just really, as you said, is an instinct. So it's very alluring to like suffer. It's just the honey tipped like arrow, right? that
uh-huh.
just that we come
Right.
back to every time.
When we mention something that went awry, like, oh, I didn't get your message, or I didn't see your email, and so it's been a long time. Now that I see it, there's an answer. But almost invariably in a same statement like that, the word sorry will be used. I'm sorry I didn't see your email. I'm sorry it took so long. That's built right into our culture. You could almost say that it's built into human culture because even in the Thai language, their apology word is katut, and it literally translates. Tut is the butt, the rear, and ko in this regard means to beat. Please beat me. Please beat my butt. Ko tut is what it means. But it's exactly opposite in its usage, or excuse me, in its expression, but the usage is the same. In the sense that in our culture, we say, I'm sorry, so that you won't beat my butt. But in the Asian culture, oh, come ahead, do it.
Yeah. That's a good. Yeah, that's an antithesis. um, go on.
But so anyway, back to the point is that these habits get really ingrained because we practice them over and over and over again. I mean, just think about it. How many times have you said sorry in the past week?
Just, I think
What a
like in our
dozen?
first call, it was even like numerous, so I'm already just making progress and not saying so much to you.
Oh, I was expecting you to say sorry. I wasn't keeping track.
I wasn't keeping track now.
Okay, so there's another item which is exactly the same thing as the habits, and that is skill development, which is actually the same thing as building new habits. A skill is mindfully building a good habit, but habits are almost always ignorantly formed and ignorantly operated. So we ignorantly do something, and then we ignorantly do the same thing again because we've already cut one trail. And now and doing it over and over again, it becomes a path. And by the time that we're an adult, it's an 8-lane highway.
Makes sense.
Okay.
That's why it's
And
so hard,
so,
right?
well, that's a word that the victims use. It's hard because it doesn't happen the way they want it to happen. And not only that, it's hard because you're looking for huge results that take a long time because of the idea that they're huge. And so that's what makes it hard. But changing a thought in the mind is easy. You do it all the time. You probably had 1,000 different thoughts since we started this conversation, and every one of them was a new thought and it changed. So why can't we actually intend to have wholesome thoughts? Well, we can. That's the whole beauty of the teaching of the Buddha, is that we can change our thoughts easily enough. And if we change our thoughts, then we can change our feelings. We can also change what we say, and we can change what we do, and that will begin to change the habits, which will then change our destiny. Okay?
Beautiful.
So, one thought at a time, and if you can change it right now, that's all you need to do is just change the thought right now, gladden up right now. But if we start worrying about, oh, well, I can't be happy in the future because I'm not skilled at this, you're already immediately back into unwholesome thoughts. Okay, so the skill that we pick up is the skill of recognizing an unwholesome thought as an unwholesome thought, and then come out of it. Because a lot of times we think that the thought is wholesome enough, where in fact it's not. So there's a couple of things, by the way, that we can do that's going to help give us a guide for this discernment or this discretion that we're making. Okay, and that is that any time that the thoughts are about the past, they're more than likely unwholesome. Now that's not always true. That in fact, something ridiculous like we need to replace the link on a bicycle chain. Well, I did that when I was a kid and I knew how to do it, and I know how to do it now, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's a difference between remembering how to change the link in a bicycle chain versus remembering get your finger caught in that chain and sprocket system. Okay, and the pain. Then, in fact, many kids, because they get hurt on a bicycle the first time, they don't ride it anymore. They've already established the negative attitude about the bicycle.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I'm not saying that all memories are bad, because we need them. That's what makes us human. But it's the memories that come in and color our perception to make us feel bad when there's no bad feeling. An example of that is you see someone in a particular uniform and you'll have a particular feeling about that person, where in fact all we have is the clothing that he's wearing. All right. And so we make those distinctions because we know what that SS uniform means. We know what that nun's habit means, except that we're the one who gives it meaning. That the guy, in fact, that's in the SS costume, this may not be 1944. This may be Halloween. So our perceptions are clouded by a negative past. And there's also the point that's very interesting, is that each one of us has had good times and bad times our whole life. But we tend to remember the bad times. And we don't remember the good times. Okay. That in fact, the tennis player will will hit the ball and then return the ball and back and forth and back and forth. But it's only when somebody misses the ball, that's the one that remembered, is the miss. Sometimes a spectacular save is good. That we get great joy from, but the game is determined by who misses the ball. Right? So this is how we're programmed. An example of that is have you ever had an automobile accident?
Oh, just one very minor, but yeah.
Okay, but you remember that. Now,
Yeah.
do you remember every hour that you drove a car?
Okay.
No, we don't remember all of the nothingnesses, and we don't remember all the good times, but we do remember the tragedies.
Yes.
Okay, this is what we're getting at. This is instinctual. And the reason that it's instinctual is because it's based upon the self-preservation instinct, okay, which is that fear that we have inside that's trying to protect us from the dangers. So we go around making note of all the dangerous stuff when we remember the dangers, and then we wind up having a mind full of dangers, thinking that we're going to be safe, but in fact, we're under attack from our own memory of all the dangers we've had. Oh no, what if this happens? What if that happens? And so thinking about the past is problematic. It's possibly quite dangerous and unwholesome. Also, thoughts about the future. Now, all of our future thoughts are based upon the past. In other words, you're not going to dream up or think up a very detailed email to someone that you never heard of, don't know at all. No, you're only going to write that email based upon stuff that's coming from the past, like your boss. You know him from the past.
Yeah.
All right. So all of our future planning is based upon the past. Also, it's no value for us to think about other cities, other towns, other places. There's no reason for us to get into a discussion about Zelensky and Putin because that's someplace else. Then, in fact, we can wind up being in a fight over it. So, staying away from thoughts about other places and thoughts about other times is dangerous. But thoughts about what's happening right here, right now, is generally okay. That in fact, in the present moment, there is almost very, very rarely, there's almost no chance of people being afraid in the present moment. An example is the lady sitting there and watching television, and then she thinks about, oh, I've got to pay that bill. All right. The next point is that she's sitting there watching television, and the door, somebody's at the door is knocking, and she knows that it's the bill collector. All right. Suffering in both of those cases, but one was in the here and now, and the other one was just in the past and the future. All right. How many times do we worry over a bill versus how many times does the bill collector actually come to the door?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So all of those thoughts about the bill collector, if in fact we don't go and pay the bill, but we just worry about it, that's all unwholesome.
And
If
it's
I'm
just
not
so
going to
much
pay
stuff.
the bill, at least be happy about not paying the bill.
That's a good point. I think the minds and times is just so afraid of suffering in the future. It's this fear that it's like the mind is gonna snap or something, lose control, and that's something that usually I think that's why just somehow it tries to just overthink about stuff so that it doesn't in the future just lose control, whatever that means. It's always very obscure, but it's some gnawing feeling that it's gonna
Mhm.
it's gonna cease to exist in a way. It's even like the danger is not even that palpable. It's just this hazy, uncertain future in which it's certainly to lose control.
And built upon the habit of how we feel. And so we can, in fact, change the habits themselves, but that's a long way down the line. The way that we handle those habits now is when that habit comes up now as an unwholesome thought. We can change it right now. That's the beauty of the method of the Buddha is that we have to practice feeling good right now.
Mhm.
And we can practice feeling good right now by having wholesome thoughts, brightening and gladdening the mind, which actually means, in a way, that we're changing our attitude from being a victim into being the winner. But we have to practice doing that because we're really, really well skilled at being a victim. And that's our default.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have to keep coming out of that default position and changing it. Okay,
Um,
and changing the way that we feel. So if we keep changing this thought over and over and over again, it will change the way that we feel. Okay, and there's another point that's in, it's good for people to actually experience this inside their own mind or system anyway, and that is that the body conditions the feelings, and the feelings condition the mind, and the mind conditions the feelings, and the feelings condition the body. And the body and the feelings are not the same thing. And we let the conditioning happen ignorantly. So the example would be, Bhikkhu Buddhadasa says that is, um, we're talking about, monks and meditators and whatnot like that, not newbies off the street, right? And I'll tell you what that means in a moment. But he says that when one is sick, that's an opportunity to practice. Why? Because if the body is sick and you can't get out of bed or that you're in pain, at least you can have the mind state of, wow, I get to take the day off. I don't have to go anywhere. I don't have to do anything. And the mind then can be gladdened up to enjoy the moment, even though the body is sick. So the body can be sick, but we're okay. That in fact, this is when I was in high school, in fact, for several years in a row, even going from town to town, that I didn't own the Santa Claus costume, but I did put on a Santa Claus costume and go to the hospitals in mid-December, because it really cheers people up. When people are in the hospital, they're generally quite miserable.
Mhm.
So going on to the children's ward, but it wasn't necessarily the children's ward. I mean, after you get off the children's ward, hey, let's go make the old the old ladies happy too. They want to see the Santa Claus. All right, so uh, so rather than going down the rabbit hole of going around making people feel good, the real point is that our default position is feeling bad, and so we'll use anything to feel bad, like being sick or whatever like that. But in fact, for a skilled meditator who's developed the skills already, then any adversity is a time to practice. All right. So um, the Buddha for the beginner recommends to get away from it all. In other words, if you've got 10 people in your family, then that means that you've got 10 negative things going on. If you can get away from the other 9 and go off and be alone, then you only have to deal with one person's negativity. Another way that I say it is that we get away from it all and get into seclusion, only to realize that we're not secluded yet, that we brought it all with us. And now we have to practice a deeper level of seclusion, to seclude ourselves from the unwholesome thoughts. All right, so this is how we begin. It's very, very much like a newbie going into a gym, and instead of stopping where the 1 kilogram dumbbells are and start doing some reps, he goes to the back where the 200 kilogram barbells are and hurts himself. Okay, this is the Mahasi method, is trying to lift stuff that's too heavy to lift. Um, and and this is why in the middle of it there winds up being what they Westerners refer to as the dark night of the soul, which is absolutely unnecessary. In fact, you could say that any dark nights of the soul that you've had, you have that before you start practicing meditation. Because the practice of what we're doing, the practice of the Dhamma, the practice of Anapanasati, I use the word meditation only because it's a commonly understood word, except that it's commonly understood wrongly. Because meditation is something that the Catholics used to do centuries ago. And what they're really doing is contemplation rather than investigation. In other words, they're examining a Christian concept like compassion or Mother Mary or the Trinity. There's many different kinds of things that are worthy of contemplation. All right. What we're not doing here, we're doing an examination to see Is that thought that I'm having in the contemplation, is that worth having or not? Is that a good contemplation thought,
Mhm.
or is it an unwholesome thought? So
Mhm.
we begin to train the mind then only for looking at what's wholesome and what's not wholesome so that we can come out of the unwholesome. And we can get good at seeing this unwholesome. We also have the possibility of that we know that some thoughts are just downright unwholesome, almost with the past. An example of that is thoughts of cruelty or thoughts of getting revenge, thoughts of getting even are always unwholesome thoughts, generally.
Mhm. Mhm.
You can actually think of getting even with someone and howl with laughter because he's got it coming and you know it, and you've got a, you've got a silver bullet and you're loading your gun. I'm going to get him with this. But you can see there's a little bit of dissatisfaction built into there. Why would I want to teach someone a lesson? Right? And so thoughts of revenge, thoughts of teaching somebody a lesson, thoughts of competing with others, thoughts of complaining are all the things that victims do. Wanting a do-over, wanting a second chance because they felt like that they didn't get out of it what they wanted out of it, etc., like that. So all of these kind of thoughts are unwholesome.
Mhm.
Now we can look at the kind of thoughts that we know are downright, without a doubt, wholesome. There's also a whole kind of language that the words themselves is not the dependency about the wholesome and unwholesome, but it's the underlying message of those words.
Mhm.
Uh, an example of that would be Allah Akbar. That can be a call to war, or it can be quite a relief.
Mhm.
Wow, God is so great, as opposed to Allah Akbar. You know? All right, so some words have dual um, duty in the sense that they can both be wholesome and unwholesome, or
Mhm.
they're wholesome or unwholesome now, depending upon the circumstances and the feelings and thoughts around them.
Mhm.
But some language is generally wholesome, like thoughts of "Wow, what a good breath," or "Wow, this is nice," or "Wow, I can handle that," or thoughts of "No place to go and nothing to do," and the spring comes and the grass grows all by itself. Okay, these are very wholesome kinds of thoughts to have. Thoughts about um, the tensions in the body with the understanding of relief that many students, even some new students, will come back and say, "Oh, I've got tension in the chest." The answer to that is, well, congratulations, you can see it now. Or when the mind wanders away from the breath, the common thing at the Goenka, he says this so often: when the mind wanders away from the breath, never mind, start again. Now he's got a kind of a lilt in, and it's kind of a beautiful thing. But what he's getting at is the never mind is wholesome. Never mind, start again. As opposed to, oh no, the mind wandered away. Oh no, this monkey mind, this is hard work. This meditation stuff is too much. I can't do it. But all that happened was that they recognized that the mind had wandered away from the breath. They were already in the unwholesome, and they woke up to see the unwholesome, but they didn't get out of the unwholesome. They stayed in it. They got even worse. Okay.
Got it.
But the wholesome would be, I can see you, Myra. Aha, I can see the mind wandered away from the breath. Never mind, let's go back and start again. Now, this is wholesome. So, anytime that you criticize yourself, that's unwholesome. Anytime that you're nourishing yourself, that's wholesome. When you're criticizing, that's unwholesome. Well, you say, well, how can I ever improve? The answer is always with the carrot. And let's not use the stick. Let's not use the stick on ourselves or on others either. Always let's use the carrot. Okay. And not in the sense of holding the carrot out in front of the donkey while he's going down the road. And no matter how fast he goes or how far he goes, he does not get that carrot. Oh, no. What we're talking about is giving the carrots instead of giving the stick, not holding out on the carrot.
I was wondering because sometimes like just creating like wholesome thoughts and just taking away the negativity works, but sometimes I don't know. There's just this. I think it's just random times of the day that it seems like it's um this very oppressive like feeling. I don't know what it is. I'm not sure if it's just like generalized anxiety that I'm trying to just go back to just wholesome thoughts, but it seems to be going into like an attraction, like between like the wholesome thoughts and just this just negativity that stays on. So I'm not sure how to actually deal with that when that happens.
Well, it comes along. All right. Um, there's various analogies, but what we're doing is that we're using the mind to condition the feelings, and we're using language to condition the mind.
Mhm.
Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is to get the mind brightened up, gladdened up, changing it at least a little bit out of being the victim into the winner. Never mind, I can start again.
Mhm.
Okay, that in fact, the skill that is referred to as sama sankappa is closely and deep related to the word in Pali of shraddha or sada, which means confidence, and confidence is based upon success. Okay, for instance, if you keep putting that key in the door and turning it and the door opens time after time after time, then you're pretty confident that the next time you stick that key in the door, it's going to open the door. You've got a background of wholesome.
Mhm.
But if you've tried key after key after key after key and none of them work, then the next time you try a key, you don't have any confidence in it. That you're still the victim because the keys are not working. So this is an important point to see that we can, with our language, begin to change our attitude or our mind state. And then the mind state will eventually start, like within a few minutes or seconds,
Mhm.
change the way that we feel.
Got it.
That in fact, we can have a thought. It might be an old thought. It might be something that has to be done long into the future, but we'll think about that and immediately feel bad. We'll bring anxiety within just one thought, right?
Mhm.
Well, if we can bring on anxiety by having one unwholesome thought, how about having 10 wholesome thoughts that will help relax that anxiety? That in
Mhm.
fact, this is an interesting point about it is that if you recognize that you've got anxiety and you don't want it and want to get rid of it, then you're still in a negative state, adding more
Mhm.
anxiety to it.
Yeah.
But if you have the thought, ha ha, I can feel that anxiety, let me deal with it, let me breathe into it, let me relax, and everything's okay, that will happen. So basically, people in their meditation settings, when they have anxiety, it's because they talked themselves into it, and they didn't even recognize that they were talking themselves into a state of anxiety
Mhm.
because of the unwholesome thoughts that they were having. So we can actually use the body as a monitor or a gauge for how well our meditation or our ability to have wholesome thoughts. Because when we're having unwholesome thoughts, the feelings affect the body, and then we will have anxiety, we'll have tension in the neck, headaches, a tightness in the head, in the neck, or the places. People will also have lower back pain, but the lower back pain is almost always associated with posture of the body. But all of the other aches and pains in the body is dealing with the posture of the mind. So, with this, we can then begin to uh, keep having these wholesome thoughts. And guess what? The moment that we start having wholesome thoughts, within, just seconds of having those wholesome thoughts, we begin to feel better. But then we will forget and go back into the habits, and then we feel bad again. Or that something will trigger us, a sound. Um, an example that happened to me, and I found that this was probably 8 or 10 years ago. No, it wasn't. It was less than that. Let us say 7 years ago, that I recognized that when I got into the truck, without even thinking about it, I would get into a hurry. That trucks and motorbikes have that the quality that trigger me into being uptight and anxious. Okay. Well, part of the reason for that was because I and a friend, this was a small southern town in South Carolina, we had motorcycles. We had to work on them ourselves. I mean, the closest motorbike shop was 100 miles away. Okay. Like in Columbia or Charlotte. So out in the sticks, but we had fun with the police because we knew their habits and other things like that. And so also out hair raising activities on these dirt roads and highways, 2-lane highways in South Carolina of the 1960s. So what I'm saying is that I got into the habit of being uptight and in a hurry, delivering newspapers in the morning, as well as other things like that. And that I recognized that every time that I drove, I would get that anxiety again.
Mhm.
But when I recognized it, I could cure it already. That was because I'd already developed the skill in so many ways.
Mhm.
And so just by a couple of times driving, of getting into the car and sitting down in the drive, but don't turn the engine on, but take a few moments of anapanasati right then. And then when I'm driving the truck, monitoring, is the anxiety coming back, right? And so this is a way that we can work with it once we see it, once we can see that anxiety. But you see, when I was sitting in meditation, I didn't have the anxiety. But when I got in the truck, I didn't have to think about, oh, I'm in a hurry. I didn't have to think about, I got to get to that bank really soon. I didn't have any of the thoughts like that. But the anxiety and the hurry up was triggered because it was an old, deep habit.
Mhm.
So if we recognize it like that, then always be here now, wake up and see what's going on is the solution to the problem in this moment. And if
Mhm.
we can solve the problem of this moment, and then this moment, and then this moment, we can get on a roll. And so this is where the practice of the teaching of the Buddha actually works. You can tell that it works. That in
It's good.
fact, go ahead.
It's amazing that sometimes after trying it and it working, it increases your confidence that it will work in the future. So even though you're going through like some anxiety, you're just confident that eventually like it's gonna go away and that you're
Right.
gonna be able to just survive.
So when we have anxiety in that regard, the unwholesome anxiety is that we don't like it. We want it to go away. We don't know how to get rid of it. We want to go tell the meditation teacher maybe he can make the anxiety go away, and things like this. And so we stay in that unwholesome state like that. But and in fact, many of the methods of meditation don't even teach this. Many of the meditations that are called Buddhist are not really the teaching of the Buddha.
Mhm.
Uh, The example would be the Mahasi method. Yes, they do use sati. Yes, they do use the investigation, but not fully. But they do develop those skills. They call it noting. But the Buddhist model is not a noting model, it's a change model. Once you note something, you can change it. Once you see it, you can change it. But the instructions are no, just keep noting, just keep noting. Well, what that means is that you start seeing the dukkha, but you're not doing anything about it. And then you see more dukkha and you're not doing anything about it. And the next thing you know, you're living in your own garbage pit. You really understand yourself, but you also understand that this is a pile of garbage. Why? Because we never bothered to develop the habit of making a change. Okay. The example would be in the kitchen that whenever the chef finds some piece of scrap of food, big or small, right then and there, they throw it out. They put it in the garbage. Later, the entire garbage is taken out the back. But if the chef keeps making food but doesn't clean up after everything that he makes, then the next dish that he's going to have, like let us say, Alfredo, but it's going to taste like a taco because that's what he just made, and the old junk is there. And so this is the quality. So chefs have to do that in order to make good food. They've got to throw out the junk, the leftovers of the food that they've made, and clean things out. So this would be a really good thing then for people to do, is that when you're going around your day, when an event is finished, then clean it out and start afresh. Okay. The example would be doing mathematics, whatever it is, at whatever level. And you finish this problem, but you're still not sure whether you finished it or not. Now you're working on the second one. You can't do the second one because you're thinking about the first one. And so this is that point of learning to clean the mind out, to get rid of the old stuff and come back to this present moment, because this present moment is fairly safe. The past is fairly dangerous. The future is downright dangerous because it doesn't matter what plans we make, it's not going to go that way.
Yeah, you're right about that. I think also like taking the time sometimes to just instill positive thoughts regardless of what's happening. I think that also helps, right? Just to build up this foundation, like just taking some time like throughout the day, besides like meditation as I used to know it, but also like it ends up being almost like a meta practice, right? In a way.
Well, metta as a practice may or may not be wholesome. That in fact, the way that metta is practiced according to the instruction, it is dangerous to become unwholesome. The way that it's taught often has the phrase, may all beings be happy, may all beings be free from suffering. Have you heard those kind of words?
Yeah.
Okay. Those are victims' words. Okay. May all beings be happy, including me. I'm not happy right now, and so I want everybody to be happy, including me.
Never thought about that one. But yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
It's usually the case. You're like, oh, I'm so miserable. Like I'm gonna feel like some metta for other people so that I can feel
Mhm.
better. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. So a better or perhaps more real and obvious metta practice would be, gosh, I wish everybody felt this good.
Yeah.
It also has that other world quality in the sense that when we say all beings, that's a concept. We don't know all beings. What we have is a concept of all beings. Like the United States government. Do you know that the United States government actually doesn't exist?
I know.
Yeah, the United States government does not exist. It's only a concept in the minds of a whole bunch of people.
Oh.
Except that each one of them has a unique view and understanding of the United States government.
Mhm. Makes sense. It's all concept, like
And
the
it's
underlying.
all conceptual. And that we live in a conceptualized world without knowing when we're conceptualizing, as opposed to being in the here now.
Mhm.
That in fact we can say the conceptualization is also the process of perception. And that if we're actually in consciousness and not doing a lot of perception, what that means is that we can take data without having to process it into a concept.
Mhm.
So literally be here now is coming out of our conceptualizations of what the world is. That in fact another way of looking at the world is immediate vicinity. In other words, you've got a wall behind you. What's on the other side of that wall is not in your world. That your world is the world of your senses, your eyes, your ears, what you can see, touch, taste, feel, etc., like that. But all the other stuff is concepts. And so metta here is a concept for most people.
Mhm.
And that the conceptualization is about out there. So the right way to do it, metta, is to open your eyes and look around and see the beings. Like here's Pumpui, she's sitting right here. Pumpui, I wish you felt as happy as I do right now. She's wagging her tail.
Oh God, it's awesome.
So this is so taking the metta into the immediate presence,
Mhm.
into the immediate world that we live in,
Mhm.
that I can look out here. I'm on the porch and I can look out and I can see, oh, if I, somewhere between 50 and maybe 75 meters, and that's my world.
Mhm.
People sometimes ask, well, how's things on Kopangan? And the answer is, I don't have a clue about what's happening all over this island.
It makes
But I
it
can,
makes it more palpable, right?
mhm, that if it's raining right here, I know it's raining right here. But if it's raining on the other side of the island, I don't know and I don't care.
Got it.
And so this is where the metta problem comes in, is that it's often done with conceptualizations from a victim's position.
Mhm.
You could also go so far as to say if metta is done correctly, then it is wholesome thoughts. And so I'm not against metta at all. What I'm against is the practice that leads to an unwholesome kind of thing. That in fact, I have seen meditation retreats that do, like in the evening, say 5 or 6 in the evening, that they have a session of metta. And occasionally, some old lady will come out of that metta practice just beaming with joy, which actually then proves then that for everybody else it's not working. That if metta practice the way that it was taught was working, then everybody would be full of joy when they came out of it. May all beings be happy, especially me and everybody in this room. But we don't do it that way. We do it in a conceptualized way. So I'm not against metta. Metta, when done correctly, is a wholesome thought. So
Mhm.
let's not talk about metta so much as is that let's have some wholesome thoughts.
Okay.
that in fact in a way of going is that wholesome thoughts is a form of metta. If we can be kind to ourselves, we can be kind to other people.
Okay.
The Buddha, there's a sutta. Um, Actually, it's in the Samyutta Nikaya, but I've forgotten the number of it. But the name of the sutta is the Half Sutta. HALF, half.
Half sutta.
And,
Okay.
and Ananda comes to the Buddha and says, I just came from Sariputta, and he says that friendship is half the Dhamma. And the Buddha says, oh no, friendship is the whole Dhamma. That's all I teach. Okay, so you could say then that Dukkha Nirodha, we can translate that into enemies, friends. We're enemies with the thoughts. We're unwholesome thoughts. We've got dukkha. Got dissatisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
So we're dissatisfied with people. We become enemies with them. But when we're satisfied with them, then they can become friends. And the way to practice this is by getting into seclusion. I mean, it's a whole lot easier to learn to swim in shallow water, so that if you start to drown, all you have to do is stand up.
Yeah, and just less harmful environment. Yeah, totally.
Right. And so we stay out of the harmful environments. We stay out of the deep water and learn to practice so that
Mm-hmm.
we can change those critical thoughts into nurturing thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
We begin to accept ourselves, warts and all.
Mm-hmm.
That one of the ways of talking about it is that whatever you've done in the past, no matter how despicable or terrible or forgotten by others, etc., like that, whatever happened, it got you here, and you're still alive. You've made it to the present moment. Congratulations, you didn't clutch yourself to death. We're still alive. So whatever is in our past is okay. It's good enough because we survived it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an awesome way of thinking about it.
Okay. So it's kind of like taking a train journey.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how slow or how many stops the train makes, no matter how old the carriage cars are, no matter how much noisy, no matter how dirty the cities are when we go through them, when we get to the destination, we get off the train and come and be where we are now, and we don't need to train anymore. The train got us there. Thank you, train. Goodbye, train.
I guess the unwholesome thoughts and the suffering just got me here, like in just
Yeah,
the moment of just analyzing them. So at least just I think it all worked out. It has been working
right.
out.
Uh-huh. So we have arrived to this present moment. Congratulations, Mr. Past Train, the train called the past. No matter how bad it was, it got us here. It didn't kill us along the way. There was no train wreck, not a real one. Okay. Then, in fact, all the train wrecks that we've had in our life was probably overblown, overestimated. That things weren't as bad as we had thought that they were.
Yeah.
So now that we've survived to the point of being the here now, we can let go of the past and enjoy the present moment, which means that we can forgive ourselves for all of the past mistakes that we have made.
Mm-hmm.
And now, because we have forgiven ourselves and getting over it, we can look for that again, because we know if I do that again, later after that, I'll feel regret and remorse. So I'm going to avoid doing it the next time I see it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we begin then to make friends with ourselves, warts and all of your foibles, all the mistakes that you have made, and all the propensity to make that same mistake again is okay. Why? It's because if we don't think it's okay. If we lie to ourselves about it, we'll be in a state of denial. Oh, I'm not angry, right?
Yeah.
Okay. When we deny what's going on, then that's not remembering to wake up and look at what we're doing. It's hiding from it because we don't like what we're going to see, and we know we're not going to like it, so we don't want to see it,
Yeah.
right? But we can
I,
start making friends with ourselves, understanding that we're not perfect. The human animal is still an experiment, just like apes. I mean, look how many different great apes and different mammals, not just mammals, but primates. I mean, there's um, orangutans and bonobos and chipmunks and all these kinds of gorillas, everything like that. And humans as just let us call it a primate without as much hair as the other ones.
uh,
But
we don't like to have sankaras and just to have unwholesome thoughts, but we just like to just see ourselves just so above like animals. But just human society is just a posh version of the jungle. Really, you have the concrete
mhm,
buildings, but take
yeah,
that all away, and it's
now they
nothing.
call it a concrete jungle. Why? Because the jungle bunnies that built the concrete city still make it a jungle. The city is a city if there were no humans there. But when the humans are in New York, it becomes a jungle.
That's a good way of putting it.
So if we can take that jungle out of the mind, okay. There's, by the way, a song. This is an old TV series called Monk. Monk was the name of the TV series, and it was about a guy who had phobias about dirt.
Mhm.
And he felt dirty and he didn't like it. Okay. But what that did was is it gave him a skill of investigating crime scenes. And so the whole TV series is about yet another crime that's happened that the cops, the detectives, they can't figure it out. So they call this guy in. He used to be a cop, but he was fired as a cop because he was crazy. But they will bring him in so that he can figure out because he's got the skill of investigation. All right. But
Mhm.
the point that I'm making here is that there was a song associated with this TV series that they played that song, okay, and that it's actually Monk speaking. And by the way, he wasn't a monk; his name is Monk.
Okay.
And the song, the theme song that they have is that it's a jungle out there, right? And when I first heard that, I was already Monk. I was in somebody's house and I heard that thing, and I immediately thought, oh, they've got the song wrong. For him and everybody else, it's a jungle in here. It's not a jungle out there. The jungle is in here. Just like the kingdom of God is within you, but we've turned it into a jungle. We were raised in the jungle and not recognizing that we have a holy place in there. All right. So, because of that jungle in the mind, we live in a society of people that are feeling like that they're in the jungle, that it's dangerous.
Mhm.
So what we can do is this two-step operation. The first step takes the most work. The second step is easy once we're successful at the first one.
Mhm.
And what is that? To become friends with ourselves, to nurture ourselves, to forgive us ourselves of the very things that we would forgive a close friend for, so that we nurture and accept the way that we are. But we also know that if we do wrongly, there will be regrets and repercussions, and so we get the watchfulness of, I know how I screw up. I'm going to watch for that, so that I don't screw up next time and then feel bad through remorse and regret. So we make friends that way. That everything that we do is okay. We can forgive ourselves. but we're also accepting of our foibles, then in fact, this is what confession really should be in the Catholic Church. You know, they've got confessionals,
Mhm.
but almost never does the priest hear that and says, well, that was okay, what happened. Never mind, go and sin no more. But the priests don't say that. They say, go do 5 Hail Marys, go put $50 in the poor box. You know, they we punish each other, or the priest will punish the confessor rather than rehabilitate.
Mhm.
That we call them prisons for punishment. We are not interested in rehabilitating wrongdoers. We're interested in punishing them. And so when we find ourselves as one of the wrongdoers, we tend to punish ourselves with regret rather than having the attitude of rehabilitation. Never mind, start again. Now that's the rehabilitation if we can do that. And so when we train ourselves to then to be friends with ourselves, then we can learn to become friends with other people. We can treat them with the same kindness that we treat ourselves rather than treating other people with the same viciousness that I use on myself.
Sure. Or just treating people with viciousness, and then just treating yourself as you treat other people just as badly. So yeah,
Mhm.
I usually see you talked about like punishment. You see that like in everyday life, people just wanting just punishment and just revenge, and just as soon as you start doing that, you're gonna apply the same just rule that you have for them like to you. So it just makes it just a very toxic cycle.
Yes. And so this then would be um, the training after we do the very, very light dumbbells of never
Mhm.
mind, start again. When we go out in public, that's our going around other people. That's like picking up extra weight.
Got
That
it.
when we start, we've only got our own problem to work
Mhm.
with. But when we're in a crowd of 10 people, now we have to have the power to be able to pick up 10 dumbbells
Mhm.
and handle their misery with compassion, with nurturing,
Mhm.
with metta. So we learn to have the metta, we learn to be kind to ourselves first, not just a little bit, but completely. We really do learn to accept ourselves. We're okay.
Mhm.
Because if it's okay for me occasionally to screw up, then it's going to be okay for my friends to screw up. Then, in fact, the students will sometimes come and say, I've been coming to you and talking to you for a year or so right now, and I keep coming back with the same problem over and over and over again. And I see that as wisdom. But the student thinks that he's a failure because he hasn't done as much changing as he wants to, rather than recognizing for himself the progress or the changes that he has made, and congratulate himself for that. And by
So,
that congratulations, and by having those wholesome thoughts, we become a winner. We begin to get the confidence. This is where the Samma Sankappa grows, the fourth item on the Eightfold Noble Path. Starts with Santi, Ditti, investigation, and then Virya, the right effort. Now, almost all people who are practicing some form of meditation are either putting in too much effort, which is quite common for the Westerner, or not enough effort to get the job done.
mhm.
Okay, so they're failing because of the misapplication of right effort. So the right definition of right effort is just the minimum amount of effort that it takes to actually get the job done. And this is very little effort that it takes. Oh, never mind, start again. Oh, never mind, come back and be wholesome. And that doesn't take much work, but it has to be practiced so that we can do that when we're out in the world.
Yeah, I'm realizing
Like
this.
Okay, like watching a video and reading the comments. If you want dukkha, go read comments on
There
YouTube.
you go. Yeah.
And there all of their problems and all of their worries are. And can we send, if we're reading those comments, can we send the sender uh, at least a mental message of joy, peace, and happiness, rather than trying to take the mickey out of them, which happens one time after another? We're not friendly with each other on the internet.
Yeah, it's just toxic, but you see just the suffering that people impose over themselves. It's just as if like they just woke up and just said to themselves, "Oh, I'm gonna go on YouTube and just gonna read comments that I can just be just angry at other people," and it's just so much just unnecessary suffering. It's just
Right. Well, this is part of the reason why a group of us are doing the Open Sangha Foundation, is
mm,
so that people can meet and greet and share the Dhamma and enjoy each other's company and grow from each other.
mm,
But for instance, on Reddit, there are many, many different Buddhist and meditation groups, Theravada Buddhist, all this kind of stuff. And it's a battleground.
yeah,
Reddit is a battleground.
Mahayana and Theravada, and just like people just fighting over just everything, really,
Right,
the Dhamma.
right. So basically, that's what we have on these discussion groups. Is it's an open battleground, and they call themselves Buddhist.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
Okay. So what we need to do then is find a group of people that we can communicate with that are going to help us,
Mhm,
so that they're not going to trigger us and we're not going to trigger them,
mhm.
and therefore we can learn to be friends.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been taking part in the Discord community, but it's definitely, now like on the just Sangha calls, and it just definitely helps just to have other people, and you just realize that it's actually doable to do it like in everyday life that other people practice it. So yeah, it definitely helps.
Yes, yes, the Sangha calls are really good. They actually have a kind of basis in the sense of group therapy. Okay. Uh, 8 or 10 or 12 people sitting around, each one of them, if they go to the therapist by themselves, then they kind of think that my problem is unique and nobody else has got it. But in a group therapy, we begin to recognize everybody here is screwed up in the same way. Can't
Yeah.
we get along? Can't we be happy? Right. But then on the other end of the stick is when it's a big crowd, say 20 to 100 people or even more, then we can't get that personal quality to it.
Mhm,
So a small group is
mhm.
best.
Yeah, totally.
Uh, uh, so you can see that, in fact, in the meditation retreats where there's 100 people in there, uh, that everyone is afraid to interrupt the teacher, and so they stay confused. They may want to write it down or something like that, but they don't get a chance to actually understand what the teacher is saying because they're afraid to talk or
Mhm,
ask questions.
mhm,
Um, so, because of that, there's a huge amount of confusion. The teacher can say exactly the right thing, but few people are actually listening to it because they're too busy listening to the questions that they're forming inside their mind,
mhm,
and staying confused. And
mhm,
so, great big audience kind of Dhamma talks is, we can give them, uh, the theoretical background and whatnot like that. But the actual practice for each individual person needs to have uh, some guidance from a teacher who actually had been there and done that.
yeah, I can definitely tell like just by our calls even just
Hmm.
like I was very stuck in my practice, but now it's just flowing just much better. And I'm now even like excited to put it into practice and see like what's going to happen. So it's definitely life changing, and I really like to thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. Well, now that you know that, you can begin to feel that success. And as you feel that success, you begin to gain confidence.
Yeah.
And then when you get into the mental condition, the mental state of being a victim, you can say, aha, I see that.
Yeah, totally.
But we can't see it from the inside. We have to be able to get outside of it. Um, the example of that, by the way, is about feelings, that we use language like I am angry, I am frustrated, I'm sad,
Mhm.
I'm
Your personalizing.
brokenhearted, that kind of stuff. That what we're actually practicing is that no, that's not me. There is anger, there is frustration, but I'm not that frustration. I am not the feeling.
That's a
If
great
I
point.
am not if I am not the feeling, then we can do something about the feeling. If I'm the feeling, then that makes it a huge problem.
Yeah. It's like, oh, why am I always like this, and why can't I control it? Yeah.
Hmm. Oh, poor me, and we go back into the victim's
Yeah.
position rather than aha, I see you angry. Aha, I see you frustration.
Yes.
And so, by getting out of or not identifying with the body, not identifying with our feelings,
Mhm.
we can have wholesome thoughts, not identifying even with the mind itself. Uh, I know that it sounds dumb, but the reality is that we are not our thoughts. A lot of people, when they think something, they think it's because their thought that it must be true.
Mhm.
And the reality is that a thought is just a thought, and it doesn't belong to anybody. These are not my thoughts. That
Mhm.
in fact, when we are raised, as in childhood, our thoughts are often just repeated what the teacher has said or what mommy has said or whatever like that. And as we grow up, those thoughts remain, but they stay inside. And so we think that they're my thoughts. But in fact, it's something that I heard and I'm just repeating it. And that's not my thought at all.
That's a great point. Yeah.
That most of our thoughts are not mine, they're just thoughts. And we don't even have to bother to figure out where they came from. All we need to do is to figure out, are they wholesome or not?
Got it. I'll try applying that as well.
That whether the thought is wholesome or not is much more important than its source. Christians and atheists and Islam and a whole bunch of different groups get into great big arguments about how things started. The Big Bang,
Mhm.
eons and neons of
Mhm.
one universe after another, and all of these different kind of concepts. And guess what? The Buddha says, who cares about what the past was? We don't care how it got started. We only care about what is right now. What it is right now, that's what we need to focus on, not where things came from or got started. That, in fact, an example of that would be what is referred to as psychological archaeology, to where the psychologist and the client start talking about the childhood events
Mhm.
of what happened, thinking that, oh, if I could figure out where things went bad, then I can fix it. And the answer is, man, you can fix it. You don't have to figure out where this stuff comes from. And not only that, but figuring it out where it came from is not going to fix the problem. And so there's a little story about that. And that is that this guy, a really, really angry, frustrated kind of dude, but he winds up in psychotherapy and he and the psychologist go through it to figure out that he is really an unhappy, angry, difficult person to deal with for people because he got a spanking when he was 4 years old. Okay. So I'll use the word asshole because that's part of the joke. All
For
right,
sure.
that the asshole goes to the psychotherapist and finds out that he is an asshole because he got spanked when he was 4 years old, and neither he, I mean, that's enough. They figured it out. But neither one of them realized that the reason he got a spanking was because he was a 4-year-old asshole. And so that event is not the point. And where he started getting him to be an asshole is not the issue. The question is can he see the asshole kind of thoughts right here, right now, so that he has the opportunity to change them? How things got started is irrelevant.
Got it.
We don't need that. What we need to see is what's happening right now.
Mhm.
That's what we can change. We can't change the past. It's dead. The future is yet to be. We have no chance of fixing the future. Not now. But sometime in the future, then we can fix the right now.
Because then it will be the present. Yeah.
And so all comes back to just this present moment. Can we remember to
Mhm.
be here now in this present moment rather than worried about the past, worried about the future, worried about someplace else, thinking about things, and to not feeling particularly good about it? Because if you're right here in the present moment, things feel really good. Right here, the birds are singing and the sky is blue. What else do I need? All of the problems and all of the worries are thoughts of the past. Oh, I've got to go do this. Oh, I need to fix that. Oh, this is broken. Oh, I got to go check on that kind of stuff, okay? Instead of just sitting here and saying, wow, everything is so nice. Everything is going so well.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been using that. It definitely works. Just it works just better and better, like over time, like with some practice as well, right? Just the thing with present
Hmm.
moment. In the beginning, it feels a little bit abstract. Then you feel like just some positive like feedback, and then you just and then you start applying it more. But Dhammarato, I think it's really just an hour and a half of calling. And uh, I was just telling myself, I'm like, oh, am I gonna tell him like, are we already just have a weird overrun like the time? I was like, I'm not gonna tell him that, but I ended up saying it, so I think I failed on that aspect. I'm like, I'm not gonna be overthinking that, but then I ended up saying it, so. But there was a Sankara that was just in my mind, probably. But just I don't know,
Oh,
just good.
good catch. Good catch.
Exactly.
Yeah. Congratulate yourself. That's the whole thing, is
Yeah.
that you're successful.
Yes. Yes.
An example that of pride or being a bully is that they don't feel successful, but they want other people to not know it. And so
Right.
the bully is living a lie. He's not successful. He doesn't feel successful. He wants to prove to himself that he's successful by
Mhm,
overpowering others.
mhm, mhm.
But someone who really is successful within their own mind, because in Western language, when we use the success word, it's almost always to do with how much money he makes,
Yeah.
as opposed to how do you feel. Because there are a whole bunch of people who have a whole bunch of money, and every one of them want more. They don't have enough,
Yeah.
and so they're not successful with the money that they've got. The real success is feeling successful, feeling like that you've got this made. And this is the practice that we're looking for, is that feeling of success, the feeling of satisfaction. That in fact the words for satisfaction in the Pali is sukha, which is exactly opposite of the word dukkha,
Mhm,
which is dissatisfaction,
mhm.
right? So when we learn to become satisfied with the way things are right now, that's paradise.
I didn't know Suka was actually success. It's awesome. Like that's an awesome way of just thinking, really. Um,
I did. I didn't quite catch that. Say it again.
I didn't know that sukha was like a synonym for success, like in just just Pali, like that's amazing because then it just really sets like the proper goal, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
of what you need to achieve in life or what someone would like to probably achieve in life.
Right. I have a student whose family is from the Gujarat area, and they speak Gujarati. And he
Mhm.
pointed out to me that even in the Gujarati language, Duki and Suki are opposites. Now, in the Thai language, it's Duk and Suk. In the open Pali is just the word is Dukkha and Sukha. But it depending upon the language, it could be Duko and Suko, or
Mhm.
Duki and Suki, or Dukkha and Sukha. It doesn't matter what the ending of. They're always referred to as opposites of one another. And
Mhm.
so this is an important point for people that when they're in the moment practicing anapanasati and having that satisfaction and success, right then and there, they're free from suffering. Right then and there, in this present moment, we can be free from suffering. So all we have to do is practice being free from suffering right here, right now, not off into the future. The whole idea about, enlightenment is something that someone becomes. No, enlightenment. Think about it like carrying a suitcase. You can set the suitcase down, and then you're light. You're unburdened. But when you pick the suitcase back up, it becomes heavy again. And if you hold it for a long time, it gets really heavy. But if you set it back down again, now we're free from it. And it always happens in the present moment. So the question is, are we going to pick up this suitcase full of dukkha, or are we going to not pick it up? And if we already have it picked up, can we set it down? Everything happens in this present moment. And so enlightenment is not a future event. Enlightenment is either right now or not right now. And when we develop the skills, we have more often. We can remember quickly to put that suitcase full of dukkha down
Mhm.
rather than carrying it around.
Mhm.
That in fact, in Paticca Samuppada, there is a word, um, tanha, upadana. And the upadana word is translated into craving. Well, guess what? Craving is not a common word. We don't use it very much. It doesn't have an ordinary kind of weight. So,
Mhm.
a much better translation for upadana is not the word craving, it's the word caring. Why? Because if we care about something, we carry it.
Mhm. Okay.
We keep bringing it back up, we keep picking it back up. We carry it because we care about it.
Mhm.
So, part of the practice, if we can do this, we could say it in a very humorous way, like, I don't give a flying rip. Now, that's a very wholesome thing to say. I couldn't have told you that 15 or 20 minutes ago when I was talking about words that are downright wholesome. I don't give a flying rip is wholesome rather than caring, which is unwholesome. Unburden ourselves. Don't care about things. That
Yeah.
what happens right now is good enough. All that stuff that I care about, that's way over there. It's back then, it's out there in the future. And I don't have to carry it around right now. I can set that stuff down. Wow, what a relief it is.
It really is.
That's exactly what the word satisfaction and success. What a relief it is. The success is after the job is done. The Buddha talks about that in the sense of the work that needed to be done has been done. Well, what is the work that needed to be done? Change the way that we're thinking, change the way that we're feeling is all we have to do right now. That's the work that needs to be done. And when that work is done, then we can really relax, throwing those unwholesome words, those unwholesome thoughts, those unwholesome feelings out. What a relief.
Yeah, that's just better. Like right now, like just hearing that,
Mm-hmm.
just loudens the mind.
Mm-hmm.
uh, um, I don't know. Like really, can't even like comment on that. That's just seems like common sense, but just when you
Okay.
hear somebody saying it, it just really automatically flattens the mind.
Okay. Well, why don't we finish now? This is a good time to stop. I think that
Yeah,
we've gotten some useful things said
totally.
here.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Victor, we'll see you again in a week or so, maybe a few days, up to you.
Okay, yeah, it sounds great. Thank you so much, Dhammarato. I hope you have a great morning with all the birds in the forest and everything. It
Yes.
was really a pleasure. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Yeah, I'll go back to my symphony of birds.
Okay, sounds good. Bye bye.
Okay. Okay. Bye bye.